What's up, guys? It's another episode of Rockin' the Dad Pod. Brian Keezer and Justin Soderberg here. We did another episode. This is episode 2. Where we talk about this episode, Brian?
Episode 2 in the books. We had Andy Geaghan on this week or this month because we're monthly. But we had a great conversation with him, talked about work-life balance, how he runs a business and runs a family. He's got 2 beautiful children, beautiful wife, and he's just a pleasure to talk to. So I enjoyed it. It's awesome. He's got some great wisdom to share and kind of how he balances it all out and his philosophies on parenting and business. Just a great time. So I think you guys will really enjoy it.
I had a blast too. I mean, Andy has been a longtime friend. There's some discussions that we've obviously had in the past, personally, him and I, but there's a lot of new things that I learned, a lot of things that were good about him being a father, the relationship with his wife, Lindsay, and his kids, and the relationship with his dad and his parents and the business they ran at Geaghan's pub and brewery. So it was a lot of fun. Andy is right around the same age as all of us. So we have that aspect of growing up around the same time.
Yes.
You have a benefit of being a father of multiple kids. He's a father of multiple kids, and I'm having one on the way. But so there's a little bit of experiences all there. And again, not a how-to podcast. This is more about how Andy and how myself and how Brian do the work-life balance and do it okay, because no one does it perfectly for sure.
Right. So grab some reserve wings, grab a can of refueler, some pub cheese, sit back. And enjoy.
Subscribe and follow as well on all the places. But yeah, those things too. But yeah, episode 2, Andy Geaghan from Geaghan's Brothers Brewing Company, also a father of 2 and a Mainer. Yeah, so enjoy, everybody. How's it going, guys?
Oh, hey. Hi.
What's up?
Hey, friends.
This is fun to have three people on here. Now we can all talk over each other.
Right?
I can't wait. I'm good. It's one of my features. I'm really good at that. How'd you know?
Well, it's funny. So we were talking a little bit before we started recording. Brian had mentioned about we all have beards, but Brian had mentioned that Andy and Brian had better beards than I did, and then Andy comes on and has a trimmed beard down. So
I know.
Now Brian is just superior to all of us.
Just a life of disappointment I seem to lead.
The COVID life has claimed my beard,
I bet it's claimed many a beard.
Pulling the mask up over it hasn't been so much fun.
No.
Yeah. when these ones started working up into my nose, it was not. I was out. Peace.
Well, I think I did it one day with having my N95 mask on, and I didn't shower that morning, and I got really sweaty during the day, and then I got home at night, and I was just like itching my face like a dog because it was so like just nasty, and I had to get in the shower and wash my face off. So yes, having a big beard is not fun in a COVID situation. Brian can probably attest to that.
I can attest. It is a horrible experience. It's not fun wearing one, and then when you take it off, your beard just looks horrendous and like all these creases and folds, and then you're embarrassed. So it's a struggle. I just don't leave the house then. That's my solution.
Are any of us, other than going to do work and stuff like that, leaving the house much anyway?
Yeah, it's a struggle.
But yeah, we're here, rocking the Dad Pod, episode 2. This is fun. We did our first episode a month ago, just Brian and I. Now we decided to invite Andy on to talk, and we're going to talk about a little bit of some work-life balance and how everybody does it. Obviously, I have one in the oven, so I don't have the work-life balance yet with a child, but I do have that with a wife, and trying to figure out, with my hours at OBC. For a long time was working nights, weekends, stuff like that. So just, introducing that into a relationship is a little different. When we first started dating, I was basically pre Margin Street. So it was just downtown Bangor, and I was working like maybe 2 nights a week, and I was living downtown. So like when we'd hang out, it would be like this, like, oh, I'm done work, and I'd be popping over, like, quickly ready.
It's easy. Yeah.
And then like 3 or 4 months later, we launched Margin Street opening, and I was at OBC like every night for like 3 months. So it was definitely a culture shock, but a shock to Taylor in that aspect of it. But I've learned to try to balance it out a little bit more now.
Yeah, it takes some time to figure that stuff out, and I know what I do and Justin, what you do are very, very similar in those regards, where I'm at the pub a lot of nights, or I'm on the road a lot of days, and it's difficult to be real tight on my timelines and being here, even sometimes being here when I say I'm going to be, because sometimes I'm out and doing things, and a big part of it for me is, um, for me, with a work-life balance from a perspective of a dad, it starts with having um, a great relationship with my wife first and foremost. I mean, I'll tell you what, I couldn't do half of what I do without Lindsay being such a critical piece of keeping everything together here at home. And Lindsay works too, and is super busy in her own right. But the beautiful part about it is she's a teacher, so she's got that similar schedule beyond the school day. But she's able to be home when the kids get home and those sorts of things. And so, and her patience, sometimes I actually have to tell her every once in a while, like, you need to tell me no more. You need to like, like, come on, demand some things. Cause like, I feel like I'm slipping here a little bit. And, but it's weird because, you've just got to figure out the time when you've got the time, and sometimes you got to make it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
especially in like an industry like yours, and like being in a position like you are, that relationships are such a strong piece of that. It's not like you're just going and dropping stuff off, and like you're cultivating relationship with all of your customers and future customers. So it's hard to, like, I'm a horrible timeline keeper, because I'll be like, oh, I'll be gone for like an hour, and then 2.5 hours later I'm finally home because I just got talking to somebody. And it's hard to,
Yeah.
like, you know put your
I think
family
you and I are
first
probably really,
sometimes. But
really similar. Yeah, I mean, you and I think are similar in that I've seen it from times we've had conversations. Because I am notoriously late, and it's not because I have trouble um, going to stuff. It's not like I'm procrastinating on that. I find myself having such a hard time leaving
yeah.
something. So it's like I'm in a conversation, or I tell Lindsay, yeah, I'm gonna head out in 10 minutes. Um, and I've got 10 minutes of work to do, but somebody I haven't seen for a long time walks through the door of the pub, or I get
Yeah.
a phone call in the brewery with a business relationship or a partner or something like that. And you I hate saying goodbye. Like, I don't want to say goodbye. Like, I gotta be
Yeah.
in on it, and keeping those commitments on the other side, and getting to the next thing on time is always like a notoriously difficult thing. But for me, it, it's it's something that I just need to stay aware of, and keep
Yeah.
it in mind.
Mhm.
Um, and for the most part, it typically works out. Oh, my puppies are yelling.
Yeah.
Oh,
the
yeah.
but it's funny how you mentioned that too, because I feel like it's probably the sense for a lot of brewery owners. That Abe's the same way. Like whenever I would go to an event down in like Portland or whatever with them and stuff like that, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
we're gonna head home soon. It's like, okay, we'll be out of here in about 2.5 hours if Abe says we're ready to leave, because he has to say goodbye to everybody in the building. Like whenever he goes, like,
Right. Yeah,
like it's like,
exactly.
okay, see you
Yeah.
owner, see you bartender, see you this person, and then I've ended up having that as well.
It
And
just
I'll
always
tell,
happens. And I, I mean,
you there?
yeah, we're good. We're good.
Okay, but
Now
yeah, so like I've learned that as well too. So it's come over to me as well, because I'll do it to Taylor all the time, which is like, hey, I'm ready to leave the office, and my office at OBC is the far back corner. So for me to get out to my car, I have to walk past Ace's office, down to the tasting room, see one of the tasting room servers, bartenders, the kitchen staff, and then on the way through there, you stop in the brewery maybe to get the cooler to get a 4-pack, and there's someone from the brewery there. Then you go out to the parking lot, and someone's showing up for a shift. And so, like, just for me to get to my car, it takes me a half an hour because of all the people I see on the way. So I have to make sure I consciously balance that by saying, okay, let's text her when I'm leaving in my car to say I'm on my
Yeah.
way home, so
That's
that
like, I made that flip too. So
yeah,
not saying, hey, I'm leaving in 5 minutes. I say, I'm in the car.
Mhm.
Like, I'm literally driving now, because other than that, I'm just
yeah,
making stuff up.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's that
Yeah.
cultivating
Yeah.
relationships thing that does that for a lot of us, and having the conversation with people. Not like my good friend Andrew Weber growing up, who lived next to Fifth Street Middle School when we went to school, and be like late for work or late for school every day. Or like we'd be like, hey man, we're hanging out on Friday. And he'd be like, okay, I'm on my way. And on his way was crawling out of bed, getting in the shower was on his way. So that meant 45 minutes out later, he'd be at the whatever we were doing.
It's a very rare thing for me to be late because I'm doing something lazy. You know, like I'm not hanging out watching TV, not moving my butt. It's that, yeah, it's just too many things. I've learned as I've gotten older, marginally how to get better at saying no to things too. But I love taking opportunities, and I love engaging with new things and new people and all that sort of stuff. And um when I'm notoriously optimistic on what I can get done with my time too. Like just notoriously optimistic. I think that's pretty similar with a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs and people in those sort of spheres. But holy old Lord. But I always think, yeah, I know it's going to take 10 minutes. And
Taking over the idea of putting too much on our plates too. I think that's what we do. All three of us probably have that as well. We think we have all this extra time, and so you put a bunch of things on the plate, and that comes into fathering too. I would imagine with the number of times where I've like texted Andy, like, "Hey Andy, you gonna be at the brewery?" He's like, "No, I'm at my son's soccer game," or whatever it may be, because now there's not just the business aspect of it, but you guys have the kids aspect of it as well, and soon
yeah.
for me to be as well. So
Yeah. And that's part of it. Back to the relationship thing. A lot of it for
mm,
me is I've given Lindsay the like, hey, please just pull me out sometimes. If you say here's something that's going on, I might not be there, and not for any other reason other than I hear it and I think about it and I'd love to, but I get lost. And it's a flaw that I have that I'll openly, admit I just did. Hey, but having a partner that Lindsay will be like, hey, you remember, this is what we're doing. This is what you got to be here at this time. And, I've been good that I haven't been, um, I haven't missed commitments that I've made. And that's one of the big key things. It's an intentionality, I think, too, with the family. I'll be late. I'll be late for dinner. But also I cook, so dinner just is later. So it's like I'll be on a normal day home. I'll be late for what I'm supposed to when I said I was going to be home. But if I say I'm going to be at a game, I'm going to make the game. If I say I'm going to be, at a practice, I'm going to make that practice. If I say I'm going to be there for whatever, I can personality thing on that stuff for me.
Yeah. I think too with kids and stuff, it makes it like it's a lot harder to disappoint your kids than you got to go home and see them at night when you disappoint them. So
Yeah.
it's hard with like you want them to be involved in so much because you want them to be able to be involved in those things, knowing like, ooh, how am I going to make that work? But
Yeah.
you just sometimes it just does. You don't really even understand how it's going to work, but you
Right.
just gotta. I think it's good to prioritize them and um, like when you were talking earlier about your wife. Um, I tell my kids this all the time, and I think some people might think it's weird to say to your kids, but I tell my kids all the time that your mom is my number one. Like you
Mm.
guys are number two. There's, for me, it's God, and then your mother, and then you guys are right underneath there. And they're
Yeah.
like, "Well, you love mom more than us." It's like, well, yeah, and I think that I could be the best dad for you when me and your mother are at our best together. And so
Yeah.
I think it's good to have a partner that, you prioritize, and she also like Gretchen runs my calendar because I'm horrible. You could set a meeting with me tomorrow and I would completely forget about it 10 minutes later. And then Gretchen will
Yep.
be like, "Hey, you got to get over here. You got to get, back here for this." And so
Yeah. Yeah.
it's good.
I have a line that I've used with my daughter, and my daughter is she's fantastic. She's incredibly strong-willed, though. She's a lot like me in some of those regards. And she likes to push the boundaries and engage in some of that stuff. And she, she's real intelligent and knows how to play the game a bit in those regards, and so she'll get pretty out there sometimes, pushing the boundaries, and there was a time she's always trying and get away with it and think she could get away with anything because she's daddy's little princess, and oftentimes that will cause rubs with Lindsay and Connemara in their lives, and I'm always on Mama's side, and I've made her very, very aware of that. And the line I've used with Mara a lot is, "You may be my princess, but Mama's my queen." And
There you go.
you gotta kind of have that, because if not for that relationship being strong, the work-life balance doesn't exist. I mean, if not for Lindsay and the kids, I would work would be my life in its totality. Like I don't know. I don't know how to shut it off if I'm not going to something else. Kind of back in line with why I'm always late. Like I have a hard time shutting it off. And the only thing that puts it off is knowing that I'm going to something next, and having to get there. And Lindsay keeps me in line on that stuff a lot.
How old are your kids? You got 2 kids, right?
Yeah, I've got 2. Isaac just turned 14, which is crazy.
Whoa.
It's wild. Yeah. I got an 8th grader. He's gonna be a freshman next year. I got a kid
Insane.
going to high school. It's like and I geez, it's wild to think about that from that perspective. But and Mara is she's 11. It's been talks about how fast it's gonna go, and I've always believed it. I always believed it was gonna be super fast. But to actually see it in motion is unreal.
Yeah. So Jude, he's 11, and he's my oldest, and then Lucy is my middle, and she's 9. Yeah, or she'll be 9 this month. But like same with her, like she knows how to play that game of like, oh, I can bat my eyes to dad and get out of things. And she watches like all the bad stuff that her brother does, and she knows like, oh, I got to avoid that because Jude gets in trouble when he does that. So she ends up being all sweet during that. But it's funny, like you mentioned the whole time flying, and just this week, Jude, he's trying to kind of find his way and what he's passionate about, and he's done the sports thing, and he's still into basketball, and we are talking about playing baseball this year, and I think he's gonna not play baseball. So we were like, oh well, what are you gonna do instead? So like I'm always into music, that's like my thing. So I was like, oh, maybe you could learn an instrument, and piano sounds boring. So I was like, what about bass? Let's play some bass guitar. And just talking to Gretchen, that's exactly what I said.
Bass.
And I was thinking, we were talking about it, and I was like, wow, I was Jude's age probably when I got my first drum set. And I started thinking, like, I feel like that's the first like big event in my life where I can remember specifically the age that Jude's at, and being at that and just thinking, oh my gosh, it's all downhill from there. Like I'm already seeing that phase. Like he's just getting so old. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's unreal when you start to see that. Lindsay's family has a potato farm up in Presque Isle, and we didn't get a chance to get up there this last year because of everything going on with COVID. But the summer before, we spent some time up there, and Isaac's at that age where I tossed him the keys to my truck. I mean, they've got like 6 miles of field road, and it's like, hey, here you go. It's time, man. And man, to see him like the grin on his face driving down that old dirt road that it's on their property, it's all legal, it's all good. But to have those moments, are so good. And
it's like a country song.
Yeah, well, most of my life is like a country song. I gotta fix this a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, it's funny how you say that too, because like I've noticed that even just in the pregnancy stage,
I just like
the pregnancy stage is like I can't imagine we're heading into the 3rd trimester next week, and it's like it seemed like that went by fast. So I can't imagine now having a 14-year-old and how long it's taken, like how quick that might have gone, or 11-year-old with Brian and so on. But
it's crazy.
It is.
It
It's
was
funny how
real,
you
real
guys
bummy.
to bring it back a little bit to the whole wife thing and so on. It's funny. I don't remember who told me years ago, but the fact that they had always instilled into me that the wife is number one. And I then was like, well, what, I hear all these people saying the kids are my, your life changes when you have kids and all that stuff, which is
Mm.
probably true. I mean, my life's already changed, um, being pregnant. And
Just you
but
wait.
the idea that the wife is number one. I mean, we chose our wife. Like, we were the ones that went on dates and chose to propose to our wives and marry our wives and so on. So to that aspect of it, it's like, well, we chose that, and then you chose to have a child with that person. So it's
Yeah.
like, to me, it's like there should be that order of, pay attention. Not that there's like, it's not like you said 1A, 1B. It's not like 1 and 2. It's like that aspect of like, you know,
Right. It's not better or worse than, it's just different.
yes.
And you cannot be um as well balanced as a parent without a good relationship with your partner. And I, that's not to say there aren't some incredible mothers and fathers that are single parents.
Mm.
You can do it, but
Totally.
I know for me, the foundation of what makes me the strongest parent I can be, and ultimately then also makes me the best, balancing of business and family life is that foundation with my wife. And so, I personally wouldn't want to do it alone. And but if for whatever reason you had to, you'd figure it out. I'd have to change some things.
You guys obviously have a certain lifestyle that we all live, with what the incomes that we have, the houses that we have, the jobs we have, and so on. Um, is there pressure for a parent or a father or a mother or something to continue or exceed that because you've had a lifestyle? Like, that's where that work life balance comes in. Like, the mentality I have when I just, without even having a kid yet, is, the harder I work at work, I can continue having the lifestyle we have, with the relationship I have with my wife. And then I can imagine that being more of a pressure coming on with kids. It's like, well, and then trying to use that as an excuse almost, like, no, I'm working harder at work to make sure the lifestyle we have is the lifestyle we have, and to continue that. So you could have the bass guitar that you want, or the basketball jersey that you want, or something like that for the kid. I mean, how difficult is that? Like, to figure out, and that's a legitimate question for myself as well, like, because I haven't had a kid yet. Buns in the oven. But how difficult is that to continue the pressure of keeping your job and doing what you're doing to be able to have the lifestyle you guys have?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question.
You
Because
first.
there's always more,
Yep.
there's always more. And it's a balance of I am really good at spending money. When it's for us.
Yep.
As the kids grew, I sold my boat and bought a bigger boat because we wanted to be able to have all of their friends come out and go fishing and have that experience. And as they got bigger, we bought a big soccer net for the backyard and put a basketball court in. And like, those are big money spends that forced me to work hard, but then also allow me to have a Thursday night basketball run with Isaac and all of his buddies and a bunch of the neighborhood kids and neighborhood dads and everything. And some moms get out there and kick all of our butts. It's great. So I, s- I love those sorts of things, but I think it's a lot of perspective. There are tons of things that business wise I say no to that would make me more money, but would take me away too much. I mean, there's a definite reason why Geaghan Brothers Brewing Company is only in Maine.
Hmm.
We've got a lot of opportunities to be in other states, and I don't want to manage it. I just flat out, I don't want to manage it. I don't care how much more money we'd make. I don't care how many more beers we'd sell. It, I don't want to. I'm doing this so I can provide that lifestyle with my family, for my family. Now, the kids are off in college, and it's just Lindsay and my time that we have to balance. Maybe we'll start doing some of those things. Maybe I'll say yes to some of those things, but um, providing a lifestyle for me is much more about um, providing opportunities for the family and for us to be together. Um, we spend a lot of time up at camp. We spend a lot of time. Well, I mean, we chase the kids all over for travel sports and different things like that. I mean, I sit on the board of directors for Brew Travel Basketball, and I'm taking a break from my work day right now, and then I'm working for a few more hours, and then I have basketball practice with Isaac tonight. So, you know, we spend a lot of time and money and effort on things that are family things and things for the kids. And so, yeah, I mean, you got to balance those things, but I don't know. I so greatly cherish time spent with Lindsay and the kids. And, you know, I work for that end, to be honest. There are very few things that, that I do that aren't about that.
Yeah.
Very few.
It's funny how your like priorities sort of shift in seemingly without even attempting to do it, where you have kids and like your money just kind of starts to focus more on them in a lot of ways. And like I buy hardly anything for myself, I feel like these days, because I'd rather, like for us, and I think just hearing you, Andy, talk about it is family experiences and like having time doing fun stuff together and
Right.
vacations. And like I think when I look back at my childhood, a lot of the best times I had were out on the boat with my family, you know, cruising the ocean and going harbor to harbor and staying on the boat. And those were experiences. And yeah, like my dad had a sweet boat, but it wasn't just so he could cruise around out by himself. It's so he could take the whole family with him. And so I think for us, it's that, you know, we bought a camper this summer and we had a blast just
Yeah.
going as many campgrounds as we could hit, um, and doing the fishing thing. Me and Jude just started to get into hunting this past year, which is
Nice.
like I just bought a rifle for my birthday this last week, and Gretchen said to me, she's like, 1 year ago, would you have even dreamed that you were buying a rifle and we're gonna go deer hunting? I was like, not a million years. But
No.
Jude's
You
super
were
into
expecting
it.
to buy one for protection because the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, I was like, I could go for a 9mm or something. And
Yeah.
you know, like your world just changes in such different ways. But and then you're trying to manage too, like, you know, the first couple of years buying shoes and clothes. I'm like, I'll just get whatever fits him. And then eventually your son's like, oh, I want, you know, PG3s for shoes that are
Yeah.
$160. And you're like, but you were just wearing some Walmart sneakers and you loved them, you know.
No,
And
not
then
anymore,
no,
bro.
not anymore. And so, and he's in men's sizes now. Like a
Yeah,
pair of
they get
sneakers for
really,
him
really expensive.
is like, you know, it's funny. My mother-in-law, just this weekend, we had family dinner and she was buying some shoes for the kids for summer. And she said to us, like, oh, I'll buy Jude either, you know, a pair of sneakers or a pair of Crocs, you know, for summer. I was like, you can get the sneakers because those will be like $120. I'll buy Crocs all day.
Yep. Yeah.
And, but, you know, it's those experiences, I think, are what kids, they're not going to remember that you bought them, you know, the new toy, whatever it might be. They're going to
Right.
ask for it all day. Like Jude begs to spend money on Roblox all day. And I'm like, no, I'm not wasting money on Roblox, but
Yeah.
we'll go camping this summer.
You know, when I
I-
was,
I
yeah,
agree
go
with you
for it.
guys both because now that I think about like these questions that come up in my mind of what you know the nervousness of becoming a father and things like that, and spending money obviously is a big thing because I'm 35 in May, and for 35 years or ever since I'm 18, so 17 years, I've spent money on myself and my partner, and so that's all I've ever known is not taking care of anybody. But then I thought back, someone asked me around Christmas time, we were going to do an episode of my podcast and with Paul Eaton from Galactic Comics about favorite Christmas presents, like gifts, like that mainly were about pop culture because we're like kind of nerdy people. But then I thought I can't do an entire episode of that because I don't remember 90% of the gifts that I was given as a kid because my parents were that vacation experience based people. We went to Florida or Disney World a lot, camped with family and friends and all that stuff. And those are the memories that I have. I don't remember gifts that I got when I was a kid because my parents.
Except for Nintendo.
Yeah, well, I got a Nintendo. I think the
remember
last
that.
system they bought me was PlayStation 2. And like that was it.
Yeah.
And it was like it wasn't anything more than that. I think after that, if they're like, you want something like that, you can get it with your own money and you started working. But for them, it was like, okay, we're gonna go to Disney World. That's what we're gonna spend our money on, or we're gonna go to camping this weekend or whatever it may be. there wasn't a lot of physical gifts. Like there's not like my dad had that a little bit when he was growing up, but he was the one that gave us the Matchbox cars and the GI Joes growing up because he still had those toys from when he was a kid. But for me, I don't
Right.
have that. I have pictures of me at Disney World of me in that experience. And I'm like, but that makes me do what I want to do now. And it's Taylor and I, same thing. It's like the experience is what we want to do every year, not we don't want to buy it. We obviously we do want to buy a new grill for each other to grill on. But if
Right.
I was to choose, I'd probably take a weekend away over the grill because I can cook in the oven or the stovetop or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's the experiences that I think the kids and everybody will remember for long term. And I agree with you guys on that.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, from my experience, my dad was on this grind my whole life, but the thing that's really different now than what he was going through is he built this thing up um, to where now we're a profitable company. We're something that people know. We have sales numbers that are tenfold what he was grinding for at the beginning. So, I grind like he does, but I don't worry about making my mortgage payment. He was grinding and worrying about that stuff. And so when I grew up, we didn't have um I was never cold, I was never hungry, and I always had clothes and shoes and was able to do whatever we wanted to do or needed to do. But we didn't have camp, we didn't have a boat, we didn't have a basketball court in the backyard. I mean, we put up a hoop and we were good. Um, so in some of it for me is you always have that idea of you want to provide stuff for your family that you maybe didn't have and couldn't have. But the thing that I always was and I had countless memories to carry me through these things. And um we didn't have a camp on a pond that was ours like we do now, which is fun now. We bought that, Lindsay and I bought that with my parents, so we own it together, which is fantastic. um but I remember going to a little campground. Whispering Pines was the name of it. We went every year. It was, 150 bucks maybe that my parents spent for the week. And that was a stretch for them. Like they had to work hard for that money, and it was a stretch for them. But I never felt that. I never knew it. I didn't notice that we were the ones that had a tarp on top of our camper, and everyone else's camper didn't have a tarp. Like, it's
Yeah.
fine. It was great. I caught my first fish there. I learned how to ride a bike there. Like those are things that um, that experience, that understanding. Um, is what really has given me the focus now. And so, I spend money on things because we've been very blessed and fortunate. I spend money on things that can help my kiddos have experiences similar to what we had growing up. But um, it's not about the stuff. It's not about the things. It's about working hard enough to provide the opportunities to have those experiences. And so, if I were to buy anything, if I were to spend money on something and grind for something and give it to my kids, and it's not something that builds us up together, and it's not something that gives us those memories and those experiences, like, forget about it. I mean, this year, Isaac's big birthday gift. His birthday was just a couple of weeks ago, and his big birthday gift was a lifetime fishing license, because I said, when I'm old, I want you to come back and fish with me at camp. No matter
That's
where you
awesome.
go in life, no matter what you do, I want you to know that you can come back to Maine, you can come and fish. I mean, there's a decent chance that he's not going to go anywhere. I mean, he's got a great opportunity to be, fourth generation in a cool family business, but he's going to make his own decisions and do whatever he does. And if it
Yeah.
takes him far afield, I want him to have memories that plant him here and give him roots here that he loves. And the same with my daughter. It's so, I don't know. That's it. When we kind of got on this train of like balancing how hard you work for the stuff, I, for me, the stuff is a byproduct of that work to an extent. And so if I give what I can give to my work time, and if that increases the reward, great. If it just maintains what we have, great. The only time it's not great is if it cuts into my relationship with my wife and my kids. And sometimes it has to. Um, like everything, sometimes it has to. There are days that I've missed a ton of stuff, but I've made more than I've missed, you know.
And I
Uh,
think it's important too, along those lines, that especially as a business owner like that, to instill in your kids, some responsibility to say like, hey, I make 99% of all your games, and I make, but there's some times that responsibility takes me to the office and it takes me to work, that
yep.
allows me to be able to provide all of this kind of stuff. So I think that's kind of like for me, um, with our kids, like I work a full-time job and then I'm doing coffee on the side. And so my kids see a lot of coffee in the most inopportune times. Like it's like, oh, you're doing coffee again. I'm like, well, yeah, but you know, coffee paid for this trip we did last week, and kind of thing. And so it's good
Right.
to teach them a little bit of that balance too. And another thing I was thinking while you were talking about like that basketball court and the soccer net. Um, we put an above ground pool in a couple years ago, and like our big focus was we want to be kind of that house that the kids all come to. And I
100%.
remember growing up, my sister's friends, they all hung out at my parents' house, and my friends, we loved hanging out at my parents' house, and we had the pool. And like, and it's not that we had like a bunch of awesome stuff, it's just like my parents created a good atmosphere where my friends wanted to hang out, and my sisters, and so they knew where we were, they knew the kids we were hanging out with. And we made kind of like some of those decisions, like, hey, we want to be the house that our kids want to hang out at, and our kids friends want to be at.
Yeah.
I think it's a good, that's a big focus for us when we do like invest significant amounts of money in certain areas. Like we finished our basement off, which like feels like, why, like I hate spending money on a house. Like I just hate spending money on creating a big room, but at the same time, to have a place where Jude can have his buddies and they can play Xbox and go wild, and it's not
Yep.
destroying the upper parts of my house. It's creating a
Right.
good
Right.
environment.
Yeah, and I
I'd
I
love,
do all that. Yeah, that's kind of that same focus,
Yeah.
and Lindsay and I have said forever, we want to be the house where everybody wants to hang out, and whatever it takes to do that, we want to do that. And also, w- we've worked very hard. It started really with my dad and uncles. I mean, my grandfather started the business, but he really was, he took a risk, but it was pretty soon thereafter that he had poor health. I mean, he passed away, um, 8 years after the business was started. So he was never
Oh man.
really, he never really got to see it get up and really get going. As a startup is, it just you take that time just to get to
Yeah.
get the groove. So my dad and my uncles really pushed it and grew it to something. And so, yeah, I've learned hard work and I've learned the grind, and I continue that, and I put a ton of effort into this stuff. But also I fully understand that I've been blessed, like super, super blessed with this opportunity. And so, I want to have that place where my kids want to come and be, and I want their friends to be here. But I also see, the soccer net and the basketball court in the backyard as things that I can look at the kid down the street and say, come play anytime you want. Anytime
Yeah.
you want. Because I grew up playing on the Nortons basketball hoop. The Nortons were neighbors of my
Yeah.
grandparents. And when I was in like middle school ish, late middle school, early high school, we put a basketball hoop up at my house. But before that, the Nortons had a pool. They were like about a mile away, and they had a pool and they had their basketball court. And that's I would go because they were friends of ours, and they were
Mm.
they were fantastic. And I remember those things, and I want to use the hard work that I'm having for my family, yes, but then also to give back to anybody and everybody that's within distance. I mean, if you're hearing this and you want to come play basketball, hit me up. We'll get some runs in. It's gonna be
It's
good.
awesome how you say that stuff to both you guys because it's funny. Brian and I are hopefully going to have my good friend Mike Durgan, someone that Andy knows well as well,
Yeah.
that he's still doing that. Like they bought a house in Corinth with a pool to be the place that all of the people go to their house to hang out. And it's like
Yeah.
he had that with his daughter growing up as well, of being the house that you want to come over and hang out at his house. But
Yep.
like as of in his late 50s now, he's also wanting you to come to his house and swim in his pool, and still trying to be that place in that house in the neighborhood for
Yeah.
all of us, quasi kids of his, which is kind of cool because right
Awesome.
now we live in a townhouse that doesn't really have any place for someone to come visit, but our goal will be the same thing at some point: buy a house where our son has his friends over to do that too. But again, it's the work-life balance that I think that provided for that,
Yeah.
for you guys too. Like you guys are both, I think you guys both are shining examples to that because I mean, I've texted you, Andy, and you're like, I've been busy at a son's soccer game or so on. You're
Yep.
not, very rarely do you text me and be like, oh, I was working, which you are
Yeah.
working a lot. But I'm just saying, usually when you're like, I can't talk right now or I'm busy at that time, it's because it's something to do with your family,
Oh, I'll
which is
peel
really
off
cool.
work to talk to a buddy anytime.
Usually you do it at your work because we can have a beer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, come hang out. We'll call it a work meeting. It'll be
Yeah.
great.
That's awesome.
Andy, I
Yeah,
wanted
I mean,
to quickly the funny. I wanted to make a fun little story. You mentioned the tarp on top of the camper. We had a pop up
yeah,
camper drive growing up too, and I noticed we had a tarp because it was my fault we had the tarp.
nice.
In the wintertime, I was like, "Oh, Mom, I'm gonna help you shovel the top of the camper off with a metal shovel."
Yeah,
And I'm
nailed
like
it.
trying to break the ice on top of the camper, and it put a hole in something we didn't figure out until the spring.
Yeah.
When
Yep.
it rained.
Yep. Yep.
Uh,
That will happen. That will happen. That's one
But
of the things.
Andy, talking about camping, you obviously was a little bit when you started working for the church in Orrington. Just prior
Mhm.
to that, my dad had just started working there, obviously, and it's the church you
Yep.
guys grew up in, and so on. And the summer we moved to Maine, we were working to live on the campus of the theological seminary in Bangor. We didn't, the house wasn't ready. We were moving into that we were renting, and so my parents like, well, we have to leave the house that the lease was up at in Kittery, so we had to move up here. And we didn't know when it was going to be available. They're like, oh, next week or the week after, or so on. We rented a seasonal site basically at a campground in the greater Bangor area. I don't remember the name of the campground now, but we spent an entire summer in a pop-up camper with,
Yeah.
I was 11. So Jeremy would have been 13 and Jared would have been 9. And so like 9, 11, the 13-year-old and my two parents in a pop-up camper for an entire summer was a little much.
Sweet. Sweet.
But
Yeah.
it's like one of those things, but they also instilled that into us the entire life of camping on weekends. So we didn't have a problem with it. If we had never camped before and then they bought a pop-up camper for the summer to stay in or wanted to, stay in a tent for the summer, it would
That
have
would
been a
have been
little
something.
shocking.
Yeah. Yeah. That would have been something for sure. That would have been something. It was just prepping you for 2020, though. I mean, just a lot of people in tight
There you go.
places just getting getting fed up.
Andy, I don't, obviously your dad did a great job raising you. But is there stuff that you are learning now that your dad either did right or wrong growing up in the same situation, kind of like with your kids are now, with you being a part of the business and them being around a lot, that you're using to like live your life now? Like I said, if there's good things that he did, or even some things that maybe you're learning from experiences to do differently.
Yeah, sure. I mean, he did a great job.
Mhm.
You know, we are, very similar in a lot of ways, very different in other ways. So obviously the way we parent is different to an extent, but fundamentally pretty similar. Um, you know, I think one of the things that I've learned from my dad is my dad would put in huge days, but he always found a way. A lot of it was times when um, he knew we were doing something else, or he got up early to put in the extra hours before we woke up. I mean, he worked he was there back when we were doing breakfast. He was there cooking bread and things at 3:30 in the morning. So, he would put in 10-hour day, 9 or 10-hour day, but he'd be there when we got off the bus and things like that. So, um, that's one of the tricks that I've always tried to find is those times where I know I have a lot of stuff to get done. Um, for me, it's not so much the early mornings, but it's that I'm going to take a break in the middle of this day and go to this game, and then I'll go do my work later. It's not like I've got to work and I've got to do those things. And I'm fortunate as being in the position that I'm in to be able to do that. But that's what you're afforded when you also take on the stress of, if the phone rings and something needs to be done, no matter what I'm doing, I got to go do it. There would be very, very, very few exceptions. If my phone rings and I need to go, that I don't go, so you got to find those balances and those trade-offs. Take the time. He was good at finding the time to split out and be there when he could. And being consistent in that mentality of thinking through, like, do I have to do this now? And if I can do it once they go to bed, let's go hang out with the kids and have some fun, and then go do it. Or maybe I'll this needs to get done tomorrow for tomorrow, but maybe I'll get up at 4:00 in the morning and crank it out before they wake up. Most every morning I get up and I have my coffee and I check my email and I do all that sort of stuff. And, I've put in an hour or two of work before they wake up, but then I'm here, helping them get ready for school and doing that sort of stuff. And then I go into the office, 8:30, 9:00. But I've already had that time, so some of those little tricks, are really the things that I saw him have success with and really commit to. Um, one of the things I think I maybe have learned, um, to do a little bit better than my dad did, and I think this is somewhat because of the way, um, he was really still on a startup mentality in a lot of ways, and still really grinding just to survive, and needing to do some extras all over the place. But I learned a little bit better self-care, and like um this weekend's one of those things. And Brian, you mentioned earlier, like, sometimes it's good to take that time and not be at everything, and teach that you got to go do work to afford these things, and teaching those lessons. But like this weekend, I'm heading out to camp, with a bunch of my high school buddies. So taking that time for me to have me time too is something that I never really saw my dad do. And mostly because I don't think he had the opportunity necessarily at the time. And but I've been given that opportunity, and I'm taking advantage of it to an extent. And again, it's one of those teaching moments of, like, it's okay to have you things. It's okay to go away for a minute and say, you know what, I can't do this. I can't be at that game because I'm going to hang out with my buddies for the weekend. And so that would be probably the best thing, and the thing that I've learned, from seeing him not have that time. He had it quite a bit when he was younger, and then it went away for a time.
Which is obviously harder to do if you're always working. So like if you're always
Yeah.
missing things because you're working, it's harder to say I'm going to take some time for myself, because
Right.
your
Yeah.
kids don't see that that's not time for yourself.
Yeah.
You know
And
what I
my
mean?
dad was great at always being there for us and what we needed. And I wish he had been able to have a little bit more time to do some of the things he wanted. But ultimately, I think fundamentally, my dad really just wanted to be dad. And he continues to do that. He wants to be the best grandfather in the world now. It's just what he wants to do. And me too. But I think, for my mental health in some regards, getting out a little bit and having those times is
Totally.
great. I go out a couple hours a week and still play drums and do those things. And again, teaching the kids those lessons of doing the things that are important to you.
It's awesome.
I forgot I meant to do this too. In the basement, I was going through some stuff and I found a Modern Day Jeremiah CD.
Yeah,
And
Brian.
what was the other CD you put out with another group with
Oh, was it Almost Home? Was that way
Almost
back?
Home. I have both those
Yeah.
CDs, which is
Almost
funny because on my
Home, Kung
desk
Fu
here I have
Fridays. Yeah.
my dad's cassette tape from
Ooh,
when he was playing in a
Oh
band.
man.
that's a
Um,
gem. I'm
yeah.
surprised that's not an 8-track.
Well, it's funny. It was sealed, and then we were getting ready to do that salute your hops beer. And I was like, maybe we could use a cassette tape as like a prop for a photo or whatever. So I unsealed it, like took it out of the shrink wrap, and then Asa had some random cassette player in his office. I was like, let's play it. And it obviously was left behind somewhere because it didn't work. But they were afraid that it was gonna like eat the tape. And like, that's historic. I think I was like, my dad has a box of them, I think, in the basement. I
Yeah.
don't think I'm
Oh,
worried
yeah.
about it.
Anybody that's ever been in a band has a box of some sort of recording that you thought you were going to sell that you never sold all of. That's
But I
Yep.
did find we had the digital copy on. My dad had it, and someone had just like recorded it to the computer. It was like an 18-minute MP3. So I went through and cut it up into individual songs, and I found a place online that you could submit to Spotify for free. If someone streams it and there is any money, they send you money, but there's no like subscription to it. It just takes like 2 months for it to actually get on there. So I put it on Spotify. I'm just waiting for it to actually show up so I can actually listen to it when I'm in the car.
nice.
It's hilarious.
Nice.
I haven't
But, yeah.
let my kids listen to most of the bands I was in yet. I feel like I'd scare them.
That's
Which is funny because I mean, you guys both did that too for a little while too. I mean, were you playing live shows still, Andy, when your kids were young, or?
With the church band, yeah, they
Yeah.
went on
Okay.
tour with us like a bunch. Yeah, they were our little roadies, man. They couldn't lug anything because they were so small, but yeah, they saw it all. They saw all that stuff, and Mara particularly has a real focus on music. I mean, she hasn't really found an instrument that's going to be her jam yet, but you know, Isaac's in high school. The Brewer High has a intro to guitar basics as an art class that you can take.
That's
So
awesome.
he's signed up for that, and he's pretty stoked about that thought process. So we'll see. I mean, hopefully, I would love to see him get into it. He's got some natural talent that I don't think he recognizes yet in that. So we'll see. I mean, whatever he wants to do, I'll support him on it and be stoked to cheer him on. But
Yeah.
it is fun when it's the stuff that you have a baseline for, you know, and can kind of connect with on that different level.
Yeah.
Especially with you playing drums, it'd be nice for him to be able to play guitar along with you. I mean, if you went
I
to
know.
drums,
Let's get on it. Let's get
then you
on
guys,
it.
it's hard to play drums at the same time. So
Yeah. I was telling Jude, like, if he learns bass, because I play drums at church every Sunday typically. I was like, Jude, you could play bass. We could go to church together and, you know, be on the worship team. We could start a
Yeah, bro.
band. He's got a friend that is learning the saxophone. I was like, Jude, we could start a ska band.
Oh,
Amazing.
bringing it
And
back.
he's like, what is ska? And I was like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
Well, couldn't you bring back a little Animal Suit Drive-By? I mean, you do live in Hamden, so.
Wow.
I was not in that band.
No, but I'm just saying, but you could bring back a little bit of that theme.
Oh, there you go.
That's what I meant. And obviously, no,
Okay.
you weren't in that band, obviously.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
you know.
yeah, so I mean, it's one of those things, and I think I'm learning that now. Like I said, I feel like you know, I have been married before, and now I'm divorced and got remarried. The idea of picking the right time in your life to do specific things, not even just work. I think it's just like you mentioned, Andy, about going away with your college buddies. There is still also planning that it's not just all about you. That there is a bigger a picture now. That when you were by yourself as a single person, it's like, okay, everything's about me because it's me. But once you have the extra people to rely on you and so on, there's like things you have to think about. I can't just be like, yeah, sure, I'll go out Friday night. I have to check and make sure that it's going to work out for everything on my family life as well. So I think I've already started to learn that a little bit, which will help me hopefully as becoming a parent as well, that over the past couple of years, it's been a little bit better for me to be like, okay, no, get out of work, focus on home. And then if there's something else that goes on that I want to do, that I do that, work with my wife and figure out if that's going to work out. Not like ask permission, but just the idea that like, you know, is this going to work out? Because that's something I didn't have in my previous marriage, which was
it's asking for permission.
I wanted to be out every Friday and Saturday night writing sports, and I did that, and it obviously didn't help my relationship. But so I've learned that aspect of it, and obviously parenting will bring another challenge in that as well.
And the reality is too, yeah, it definitely will. And you know, for me in my parenting journey, you know, these are the going out and hanging out with the buddies is a relatively new thing. You know, it was a lot of years where that was not
Yeah.
a possibility. We didn't have the resources to do it. I wasn't going to spend money on me to go out for a weekend with my buddies, um, because we didn't have any extra.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm.
when we had Isaac, we were 20, 23, you know, and it didn't have anything to our name. We had way more debt than income, and we had no business being parents in some regards. In that
Hmm.
perspective, you know, and so it's interesting. Lindsay and I have had this realization, particularly this year. This year has been one where the kids have gotten to an age where a lot of the stuff that we gave up, um, when they were first born, or within the first couple of years, um, we're now picking back up because they want to do it. I just bought a new set of golf clubs because Isaac is starting to play golf with his buddies and he wants to go out. Last time I really played golf, I was 22, you know, because I wasn't gonna, once Isaac was born, I wasn't gonna take a day that I had off and leave Lindsay and Isaac and go play golf. So I just quit playing. You know, I wasn't going to go for a weekend with the buddies. I wasn't going to do those things. We just this weekend, we went up to Sugarloaf for the day, um, because Isaac and Mara have started skiing and they love it. And again, I had not been on my snowboard, uh, gosh, for mm, 10 years, 10 or 12 years. You know, we went a couple of times when Isaac was young. My parents took him and said, go up and
Mm.
enjoy yourselves. And we go for a night and we'd hit a few runs and we'd come home. You know, it was pretty quick. But yeah, it's funny. We're kind of in that realm of parenting where Mara's in middle school, Isaac's about to be in high school. The things get different, not easier or harder, but different. And a lot of those things that, um, you know, I hadn't been doing. I hadn't been playing the drums for a number of years because I just, again, didn't have the desire to take time away from family to play. But
Yeah.
um, you know, I want to show my kids that I've done all these things, and you can do all these things, and you should engage in stuff that interests you, and you should stay connected and all. They've seen the sacrifice, and they're also seeing, the fruit of that sacrifice a bit. So
Yeah. I think,
it's a weird place to be right now, just because, like, you know,
yeah.
I'm gonna go play golf because that's being a good dad instead of like
Right.
ditching my kid. I'm like, this is killer, man.
This is
Like
awesome.
I didn't know this is how this went, but I'm in.
Yeah. I think too, like you talk about your dad and I think with same with my dad, like he was at every, like he coached my baseball teams, he coached basketball, he did Boy Scouts with me all through and everything. And but
Hmm.
I know like he owned his own business that him and a partner started, Northeast Tire, and somehow he was at everything. But I know he didn't have those times of like self-care for
Yeah,
that. I know
yeah,
he didn't spend that. And I think, you know, that's probably a big difference between their generation and ours, is I think maybe we're starting to see more of the importance of that and the need for it,
yeah,
to be able to prioritize some of that stuff. And I think it's good to be able to gain some sanity. And I think it goes back to having a good spouse too, you know, a good partner that sees that in each other. Because I think
right.
it's funny, me and Gretchen, we talk about all the time that the days or the moments when I'm like at my wits end, she seems to be like relaxed and can kind of swoop in. And the
Yeah.
days that I could see she's about to explode, I'm usually like, hey, I'll take them. Like it's, you kind of balance each other out in a lot of ways. But
Yeah, yeah, I think that's I think so critical to making it all work.
yeah.
You know, is finding that balance, and not just for me. It's not about hours, because you know there are weeks that I have to put in all kinds of hours. You know,
Mm,
there are weekends that I'm away for the whole weekend to, you know, beer festivals here, there, and everywhere, or something like that. And you do have to miss things, and you do have to be engaged in those things. But what are you going to do with the time when you have the time, and what are you going to do with the resources that you do have,
yeah.
and how are you going to mold it to be, as engaged as you possibly can in those moments.
Yeah,
And
being
ultimately,
intentional.
yeah, fully. Just it's just an intentionality thing. And that's where the model that I had with my parents, my mom and dad both were always there, and always showing that importance, even when things were a crazy grind for them, and a grind where they weren't really seeing the fruit of the labor yet. I can't imagine what that would have been like. I don't know how you don't quit on it at some point, but
I
they
remember
didn't. They stuck with it.
I remember seeing this summer at some point. Um, I think your dad shared it on Facebook. I know he's a big meme sharer.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
but he shared, I'm pretty sure it was him that shared like a loan statement or
yeah,
something from back like when your grandparents, first started, and just seeing that, and like how how small the amount was in today's standards, but how huge of a risk that was. You know what I
right,
mean? And
right.
just seeing like your dad explained it, and I can't remember all the details of the post, but I remember just thinking like, wow, that was really, really cool to see the sacrifice there, and how generations later, you know, you're able to step into that and sacrifice on your own, and but be part of the fruits of that original labor.
Right, right.
Cool.
Yeah. No, I mean it's definitely one of those American dream stories in a lot of ways. I mean it was it was just a little peanut of a thing that was started in 1975, and really just a shell of what it would become. And who knows what it's going to become in the next generation, if that's what they want to do. And that's always an interesting balance too. With I want my kids to know that following in their grandfather and my footsteps is something that they can do if they want to, but also make sure that they know that they don't have to. For me, it was
Yeah.
different too, because for me, it was always presented as you do not want to do this. And I think that was
Hmm.
because it was such a grind for so long, and it wasn't very successful until I was probably in high school is when it really started to get to a place where it was looking as if it would be sustainable for
That's when the
a
reserve
very
sauce
long
came
term.
out.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, yeah. People started taking baths in reserve sauce, and it
Right.
got weird from there. No, but it was kind of there, and I remember in high school things changed in my life in that regard. Um, but also I learned that stuff is neat and it's cool, but it also didn't really matter, as
Mm.
much as the time and the experiences. And um, my relationship with my parents didn't get better or worse because of more or less money. It was all about how we were together.
Mm.
And so seeing that it's just interesting, from my perspective, to be it, fundamentally in the same position, but then also with the less stress of you know I- for me, there's a there's not a daily stress of like, how are we going to pay the bills. it's
Yeah.
it's the, hey, what's the next thing, and are we going to, how are we going to engage in this. And I'm notoriously bad. I've got far less savings than I ought to have, for me right now, but I don't really care, to be honest, because I want to live a certain way, and I want to provide a certain opportunity for Lindsay and the kids. And um, we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when it comes.
Mm.
It's all good.
You basically, I mean, I don't want to last talk forever, but I wanted to know this. You basically got reinvigorated with the pub when you opened the brewery, right? I mean, like that was not right around that time, but I know you went away because I took over your shifts. Actually, it's a fun story.
You did.
Andy proposed to his wife in the back room. Well, back room sounds really weird. What's the Shamrock Room?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so, but you had quit a couple weeks before that, and I had taken over your shifts.
Yep.
But Lindsay didn't know, right? That's the story. Lindsay didn't know that you had quit, so that she thought you were working that night. I believe that was the original. This could be, this is what, how many years ago now?
Yeah.
And so, but the thing is that you had left the business basically when you had quit
Mhm.
serving, and then you came back as what, front house manager?
Yeah, sort of. So I, from on the business side of things, I started bussing tables when I was like 14, family business, you can get away with that stuff. And bus tables and wash dishes and did all that sort of stuff. And then served tables through my high school and through college. Then, after college, went to seminary, got my master's in theology, which is a whole, we don't have time for
Yes.
diving into and unpacking all of that stuff. But at that point, yeah, I as I was finishing up my coursework, I got an opportunity to step into a more full-time pastoral role, and also actually was teaching high school physics, chemistry, and AP environmental science for a little while. So, um, I obviously didn't have time for all of that. So I
Mhm.
was right out of college. For the first year of seminary, I still waited tables, but then it was the teaching and the part-time ministry, and then I went to a couple of years of full-time ministry, before really being able to convince my dad that, well, and this is another kind of long story,
Yeah.
but the growing up in a family business like that, the pub was always in my down the road plans, and when I finished my master's degree, it was kind of that, like, well, what's next? And I knew that I did not want to make my career in the ministry. Um, I don't I don't like that for me. I don't think that's where my call is. I think my call is much more in community ministry and outreach in those regards, being um, a different um, a different than the norm, but in the world a little bit more. My greatest ministry wins are when people ask me questions of like, why don't you stress over this, and why don't you get so upset like some people do when things go this way or that way, and those are the moments that really my calling lives for. It's barstool ministry much more than church pew ministry in a lot of ways. Um, and I didn't like where my worldly ambition took my ministry when it was my career. And I did that for a couple of years, and the numbers of people showing up mattered, and the offering plate amounts mattered, and to me, that's not where I want my ministry to be. I don't want it to be about those things. But anyway, that's as quick a
Yeah.
layout as I can get there.
Mhm.
So Lindsay and I were talking about what was next, and the pursuing a PhD was there, but there's a whole backstory to this that, again, we don't have a whole amount of time to unpack. Maybe we can come back and talk about that some other time, and probably in a different podcast than talking about dad stuff, because it's pre-kids for me, but, well, sort of. But ultimately, the pub was always in my plans, and Lindsay at one point said, like, why is the pub always down the road in your down the road plans? And I misunderstood it and said, well, because it's my family business, and it's something that I don't, I feel called to it in a way, and much like I feel called to the ministry stuff I was doing. And she said, well, why is it down the road? That's what I'm saying. Not why
Mm.
is it part of your plan, but why is it down the road? And I said, there are all these things I want to do, all these things that I want to accomplish in life and ministry, and building a better community and those sorts of things. And she's, well, you can do that there. And I'm like, no shit, huh? Yeah, that's, wow, huh? Yeah, no, that's what I was planning. Yeah, I got
And
you. I
again,
got
that's
you.
why it's good to have a good wife at
I'm
home.
like, and so I came back. I was out of the business completely for 5 years, 5 or 6 years, and it would have been 2008 um, 2008, I went back to the pub. And I started I started back in the kitchen, and I was a lead lead cook in the kitchen, working under my Uncle Pete, because that was where when I came back to be an owner eventually. You know, it was one of those things. I was not given shares out of the gate, but the plan was, all right, let's get into everything. So I got back into the kitchen. I got to a place of managing shifts in the kitchen. Pete obviously is the head kitchen guy and in charge of the whole thing, but I was running the shift and doing those things when he was away. And then I moved back out into the front of house, which is my more natural. I love to cook, and that's one of my favorite things to do when I'm not at the pub, is cook big meals and have people at my house. So it's kind of like, it's just this feedback loop of me doing the same thing over and over again. But um, then it was front of house, and then it was 2011 the brewery started. So it was, it was a journey in there of getting that all to be, and that is a whole long story in its own right. But yeah, that was how I came back into it, and um, it's been kind of a juggernaut ever since. And ultimately, the growth has stopped because of those decisions I talked about earlier on of, I, I want to have a certain lifestyle, and that lifestyle, yes, to an extent about making more money or making a certain level of income. But I'm in a place where um, I don't feel like I need anything more. I don't have anything I want to prove from a business perspective, other than I want to prove that we are good community members, and that we're stable, and that we're going to continue to be supportive of so many different things. Um, but I don't have anything to prove about making more money or having people look up to me for some sort of like I don't that stuff. I have that thread within me for sure. Where some days it's like I'm going to grind for this, but then those are the days where I lose sight of why. And as long as I never lose sight of why I'm doing what I'm doing, I'm much better off. Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting thing. And I think I get a little bit heady and philosophical with it from my ministry background, because honestly, I feel called to be where I am. I feel very, very called to be where I am, and to be doing what I'm doing. And there's a lot of thought that goes into what I do with the resources God's blessed me with. There's a lot of thought that goes into the time that I spend. There's a lot of thought that goes into the image I put out there to the community. And it's not for my bank account. It's for making a better place for us. And not us being my family, but like us. Like I think I've been blessed with an opportunity to work hard and be afforded some nice creature comforts, but I don't feel like they're for me entirely. They are to an extent, but they're to share. So that's
And I just thinking back on it too, with you and your family launching the brewery as well. I just think that you've also felt like you've taught your kids, or anybody that looks up to, your kids' friends who look up to you guys as restaurateurs and brewery owners, that you didn't do the status quo. Like, you kind of came into the business and were able to, because your dad and your uncles were able to get it to a point where it was, and keep it going, that you were able to take some risks and open a brewery in a time you took risks opening a brewery before breweries were the boom really happened in Maine.
yeah
It was towards the very beginning of that boom,
yeah right on the
and you
front
took
end.
that risk. That it also teaches your kids, if they decide to get into family business, that you've built it to a spot now, and if you keep it going, keep it profitable, and keep it going, then maybe they could take those risks and do something different. They want to open a distillery, or they want to branch out to another location, or whatever, that they could choose that option.
Yep.
But your job could potentially be to keep it up to a point where they can take it over if they want to, and not take over a bunch of risks that you've already taken when you don't need
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, no, I feel like I've hit a stride um, that puts me where I want to be, and able to do the things that I want to do in life. Because for me, work is life. I am I I am who I portray on TV, I guess, like I had a good friend of mine, fraternity brother of mine, pass away when we were 20, very unexpectedly. And that was a big catalyst for the seminary move and things and all. But in my early 20s, I made this decision to be who I wanted to be, and fundamentally just be who I wanted to be, and figure out a way for that to work, in what I did. Um, and I didn't know how that was going to play out, So I kind of like, I'm really happy it's gone the way it went, because that's kind of a bold sort of thought process for a 20-year-old with, an ecology and environmental science degree going to seminary. Like, it was my early life was like 18 non sequiturs all kind of crammed into things. Again, just saying yes to opportunities, and following that path of just like, I want to do what I want to do, and I want to be who I want to be. And I had a lot of figuring out to do on that path. And, ultimately I, I love where I am, but it's not about, it's never been about a bank account. It's never been about, um, I look at dollars and cents every day, and I work on maximizing profitability every day, because I'm a business owner, and that's what you have to do. But it's not like it, I would rather lose my shirt doing it right than make another $1 million for the business. Not me, I'm not making $1 million, but make another $1 million for the business, doing something that is in opposition to who I want to be. And so, I think that shows in the success that we've had. It's pretty authentic, pretty real.
I know, like, for me with Unrest Coffee and purchasing that 2 years ago, as I started to dip my toe into that, like owning your own business, and kind of like, how do you even do anything that deals with owning a business? Like, I remember I emailed you just some like quick questions, because I was like, hey, if I'm gonna try this, I probably should ask a few people that know a thing or two. And like, you were at the top of my list of who's owning a business, but also owns it the right way, who runs it, who is just like an all around good guy. And, you know, and I think that that shows in the way that you guys run, is that you guys are like a family run business that's successful, but is for their community and for their state. And I think you guys do a phenomenal job. So,
Well, I really appreciate that. Yeah. Well, thanks. And I think, I've been watching what you're doing with the Unrest brand, and I think it's fantastic. I think it's super super cool, and I I, I think there's a lot to be excited about, in general in this area right now too. I mean, we're getting kind of off topic on that a little bit, but there are a lot of really cool people doing a lot of really cool things, and a lot of really authentic stuff happening. And again, back to the topic at hand with balancing work life, creating the company the way I want it to be allows, even when I'm bad at that balance, allows me to be, engaging with my family. We took a trip to Canada a couple summers ago with the beer box. It was purely a work trip in one regard, but we went, and the couple of days that I was at a beer festival selling product and engaging with potential new customers that pass through the Bangor market, um, Lindsay and the kids were walking the boardwalk in Halifax, and hanging out. And then I was able to take an extra day on my trip or two, and see the sites together and do those things. So it's developing your brand and your company in the way that you want it to be for your lifestyle,
yeah.
is something that if you're looking at being an entrepreneur and being involved in something like that, be intentional with that when you step out of the gate.
Mm.
Particularly if you want to be an entrepreneur and have that be your whole persona, great, go for it. Then it's about maximizing profit and whatever. But if you want to be a certain way, and live a certain lifestyle beyond dollars and cents, then I'll encourage anybody listening to this, just be intentional in how you develop it all, because it can suck you in, and I make mistakes on it all the time. I find myself sometimes giving up a weekend and getting involved in something and seeing, that really wasn't that's not on brand, really. It didn't pan out the way I
Yeah.
thought it was going to, or I didn't really count the full cost of this thing. I got no foundation under this dumbass thing. And so really just be intentional. And I think we've come back to that thought process multiple times in this conversation about being dad and with work-life balance. It's just an amount of intentionality. Just grab your life and create your life the way you want it to be. And I get that I have a little bit easier opportunity to say that because I'm my own boss and those sorts of things. But you can find those things in any sort of realm. I did that same stuff when I wasn't my own boss too. And again, I think being intentional and never straying from your why. Like, answer why am I doing this? And then decide if the answer to that is worth the time spent.
And funny thing about that too is you say it's a family-owned business. When someone says Geaghan's family-owned business, what they mean is the Geaghan's people own it. Your uncles, your dad, you. But it actually, deeper into it, it's family-owned, meaning that your entire family, including Lindsay and your kids, are really part of that business in the sense that when you're working or not working, you're still working because someone could call you at any time. And just knowing, like you said, a quick text message here and there, I guarantee you that, if someone texts Brian about coffee at 11 o'clock or hopefully not 11 o'clock at night, but like at 9 o'clock at night and they're watching TV and there's a quick text message, that none of our wives would ever care about that. Or someone texting me from the tasting room being like, hey, how do you do this? Quick message back. It's making that decision on whether or not going into the business or going into doing something is worth the time at that moment. Can it wait? Can you plan it out better? Can you figure that out in the long run? And that's the same thing that Taylor and I have right now, which is it's not a problem taking time to do your work because the jobs that we have, I make a salary because of what I have to do for Warren Brewing Company. You make your income because of what you have to do for the brewery or the Geaghan's. Is that as long as it's planned or that, it's fine. Like, it's not an issue. And we go to open back up to the public again, have seating. I'll be there every weekend. Whereas right now I basically alternate weekends. I'll be there every weekend for a month. But Taylor knows that. She's going into it. She's aware of that. And if our boy was born right now, we'd all have that understanding. Okay, for the next 3 or 4 weekends, I'm going to be busy every weekend because of this. But then there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And so like that communication aspect, not only intentionality, but communication part of it is also huge.
Yeah. I went when we first opened the production side of the brewery. So this would have been 2015. Talk about work-life balance. I went all of June, all of July, and halfway into August, and I only took 2 days off that whole stretch. And by 2 days, I'm talking I was working 7 days a week, and I took two 6-day weeks in that mix. And that's not to boast or brag, because that's dumb and you shouldn't do that. But it was what it needed for that moment. And back to that, me deciding I only wanted to do what I wanted to do. The exception to that is, and I'll do the stuff I have to do to keep the things I want to do alive, And so it took that to get it off the ground and to get into the market the way we wanted to get into the market, and to jumpstart the startup of distribution. It was 75, 80 days with 2 days off, and it was a grind, and a lot of them were 12-hour days, or more. But it worked. And again, exactly what you're saying, having a partner on board with Lindsay to say, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to I'm going to put in every ounce of what I have left when I get home to be there and be as present and be as engaged when I'm home. But I got to get up the next morning and do this all over again. And you're going to have to carry the load here. And she was fantastic and did, and really got us to where we are now. My dad did those same things, and that's why we're able to be here. So, yeah, exactly. You're never going to hit everything. You're never going to be perfect. You're always going to doubt and question, are you being a good enough dad? Are you being a good enough business owner? Are you being a good enough employee? Are you doing what you need to do? Like, if you're a dad and you don't question yourself constantly, um, I don't think you're paying attention. Like, I just don't. I just think you've
Yeah.
missed the whole thing. Like it's constant. It's constant.
And to get this wrapped up a little bit too, but I guess, well, I don't want to, hammer home over and over and over again that Brian and I don't want this to be a how-to podcast, because I feel like there is no definition to how to be a good father. There's no checklist on that. There's some things on everybody's list that you just have to check off, being loving and caring and so on. But I think the truth of the matter is the intentionality, like Andy said, in communication with your spouse and your kids, that makes it the work-life balance work, because everybody has a different job. We're talking to Brian, who works from home mostly right now but works for the hospital. You own a brewery and I work at one, so, or a brewery and a restaurant, and I work at a brewery and restaurant. So it's we all have different jobs and different responsibilities, but it's the intentionality and the communication that really makes the work-life balance work. There's no definition to it. There's no, this is how you do it, because there is no how to.
No, and everybody's situation is going to be different. Everybody's relationship with their spouse is going to be different. There, and again, we went back to it. There are plenty of fantastic parents who are doing it solo. And hats off to those folks who are able to balance that. I'm so glad I don't have to. But yeah, it's be present as much as you can, and that's not physically present as much as it's mentally and emotionally present. Be engaged, to balance this whole thing. I don't ever spend enough time at work or enough time at home. I always am missing something when I leave one or the other. My to-do list I've never once had a day where I went home after completing everything on my to-do list. And I've never once gone to work, particularly in the summer when Lindsay and the kids are home, that I'm not missing something I want to be a part of. Our camp's up in Lincoln, and lots of times in the summer, Lindsay and the kids are up there, and I'm commuting from Lincoln just to be able to have dinner with them for, a couple hours and catch a couple of big bass with Isaac and get up at 5 a.m. to do it all over again. And then I leave and I know they're going to be out there swimming and playing and having a blast and creating memories that I'm not going to be a part of. But I also know that if I don't get up and take my ass to work, we don't have the place and we don't have the ability to have those memories made. So it's that be present, be intentional, know your why is a big thing. Like what is the reason you're doing these things? And if it's a really clear thing. If the reason you're doing these things is impacted negatively by doing it, it's a clear like, nope, that doesn't work. Like if there's no return on that investment, like why are you doing it?
Exactly.
It's good.
I think it's awesome. I think that, like I said, everybody's is going to be different. If we had a different person on today to talk about work-life balance, and also someone who owns a family business, we could have a completely different conversation, because again, that's how they do their life compared to what Andy and Lindsay and you guys do your life, as well as Brian and Gretchen. There's no perfect part of this, but that's why I think it's cool for Brian and I to have guests on like you, so we can have this discussion, because it might get kind of annoying with the way I'm going to do things and the way Brian's going to do things. It's nice to have that third person in here to talk about how they're going to do something. I think a lot of times we'll have the same, we'll all understand exactly what's going on together. But I think that it's cool to have that third person in to talk about stuff. And, and Andy's restaurant is open. So if anybody's in the Bangor area wants some good wings and some good beer, Plus, if you live in Maine, pretty much anywhere you can buy beer, you can buy Geaghan's beer right now, right? I mean,
Pretty
you can
much,
buy beer in a
yeah.
place, you pretty much can buy Geaghan's beer
Yeah,
as well. So
yeah, we're all over. We're all over the state of Maine, everywhere, everywhere. Sometimes it's crazy the places that like, because I love being out in like way out there parts, and it's funny you walk into some of these little corner stores sometimes in just tiny towns that I've never been in, and I'm just passing through and I stop and there's a product that I make that's it's wild to see that. It's crazy, crazy,
yeah, it's
crazy,
pretty
Awesome.
crazy.
crazy, crazy. But
Well,
it's
sooner or
cool.
later, Brian's coffee will be in the same
Yeah.
spots, right? Everywhere around the state.
That's the dream.
There you go. Yeah.
But
We'll
yeah, so
see.
yeah, Geaghan's is on Main Street in Bangor. And then you guys, obviously don't want to spill any beans, but you are hoping to open your tasting room brewer at some point again. Is that the plan?
Yeah, probably, yes. But it's a matter of, the governor's orders just came through again. It looks like the end of March we're gonna have a chance to go 50%. I think that's gonna be enough meat on the bones for us to give it a shot just to see what happens. So we're gonna look at it. Whether or not we probably won't hit like the first day we can be
Yeah.
open, just because we've got plenty of planning to do and thought to put into it. Um, but yeah, hopefully 34 Abbott Street in Brewer will be open again. I would say by sometime in April, I would
Yeah.
imagine. But
Because I know we're planning. Obviously, we're a restaurant in Orono. We opted to
yeah,
close and do to go beer only, just out of the ability to do it. We had planned
yeah, it's been
before
a
the
mess.
governor's order came down to open on the 25th for indoor seating and spaced socially distanced
Great.
seating and stuff like that. So that podcast is coming out on a Friday, so we won't really announce it until Monday. But anybody listening gets a nice little
Hey,
preview
Surprise.
that will be open for 4
Woohoo!
days a week. And then at some point, and then now that we can open Bangor, same thing. I don't think we have a plan directly to do it yet. I think it's one of those things that we can. So now we can discuss the idea of what we can do. It's
Yeah.
just it's a crazy time right now. And
And a lot of it for us too. We've got a bunch of things still in flux with the new orders at the pub,
Yep.
and that's been rolling. So, our initial efforts will be in adjusting to the new parameters for the pub that's already going, and then once that's in line, again, kind of going back to that balance, like I don't want to take on all this at once.
No.
And it's just not going to be worth it. We want to do it right when we do it. And also with that, if you're hearing this before St. Patrick's Day, is this gonna go live
Yeah. Yes, because it'll be Friday the
this
12th, or
this week?
12th.
Yeah, awesome. We're gonna close St. Patrick's Day. We just don't think there's any way we can do it, and do it respectfully to people's health and well-being through this pandemic. I feel like we're getting towards the end of it, and why screw it up now? So we're gonna be closed that day. But what we're gonna be doing instead, for everybody who wants to get stoked about this and hopefully maybe be encouraged to do something good yourself, we're gonna cook a big corned beef and cabbage dinner and donate all of it to the Bangor Homeless Shelter. So we're gonna be still celebrating St. Patrick's Day and the community aspects of it and the celebration aspects of it, but we aren't gonna have customers that day.
And it makes 2022 even better. Like, it makes it so that St. Patrick's Day in 2022 hopefully can be the St. Patrick's Day you're used to.
Yeah, I think we're getting back to it. Come on now.
Yeah, we get there. We're getting there for sure. So sweet.
Awesome.
Brian, you have anything else?
Not a word.
Not a
Loved
word.
having you on, Andy. Always a pleasure.
Yeah,
You're a
right on.
gentleman. And
we still haven't figured out a way to end
this.
this podcast yet. So we just kind of like teeter out at the end of it.
Yeah.